So I'm going to ask for our unbelievable experts and panelists to come on up on stage and join me so we can get this party started. This panel is called Rethink Everything. So it's sort of the theme of the conference, obviously, but it's also sort of exploring where we're all headed. And you'll see this theme throughout the conference, obviously. But it's important for all of them to come on up on stage now. Alby, Bocanegra, we've got Andrew Rasiej, we've got Maria Sylla-Dixon, and I think, do we have a fourth? And Ellie Noam, Dr. Ellie Noam. Let's get them all up here. Thank you, Doc. Okay. Ben, if you can load up the first slide from Maria. Is she here? Okay, here we go. Thank you all for joining us. I'm going to have you guys each do somewhat of a introduction, and then we'll go right into the first slide that we have here, and that's being blown up from the T-Mobile crew. So I'm going to start on the far end from a legendary New York advocate for technology and data, and in a lot of ways, fairness and, of course, civil and civic participation. Andrew Rasiej is the founder of Civic Hall and many other things in the past. We've known each other for a long time. He's known Bruce since the 1920s. So Andrew is one of the real visionaries, has been active in the political sphere for as long as I can remember, ran for public advocate at one point, and has been supportive of Silicon Harlem from day one. So you have a lot of advantage when you have an Andrew Rasiej on your side. So I want to have him say his own words. We're going to go down, the panel here from Alby to Dr. Noam to Maria, and we'll start with Maria's slide once we get to her. Andrew.
Thank you, Clayton. First of all, I wanted to say, can you tell me where you got the microphone? Hello?
Okay.
There we go. Yep. So, Clayton, could you just tell me where you got that jacket?
Here's the thing. No one actually commented on the shoes. I mean, come on.
Yeah? Clayton, I'm going to change jackets with you later. Anyway, it's an honor to be here. Good morning, everybody. For those of you who have never heard of Civic Hall, let me just tell you a little bit about it. Civic Hall is a community collaborative event space at 22nd Street in Chelsea. We opened it about 3 years ago. It's a space for people who believe that technology should be used for the public good. And we're very fortunate because we have over 1,000 members, individual members, and 100 organizations that are part of our community. We've done about 1,500 events since we've opened. A couple of hundred non-for-profit and a couple of for-profit startups in the area of civic tech have been launched from Civic Hall since we opened. And we're in a partnership with the City of New York in building a new Civic Hall on Union Square at 14th Street, where in about 2 years there'll be an 80,000 square foot facility with 20 digital skills training classrooms, a 400-person conference center, and in a much larger collaborative workspace. But the most important part of that story is that the vision for Civic Hall at Union Square is that any New Yorker, whether they be an immigrant, a student, a teacher, someone with a physical or legal barrier, someone who's retired or in their later chapters of their life, could walk into Civic Hall and get digital skills training for free. And we're very lucky that the City of New York recognized the opportunity, and so in 2 years we hope to welcome you there, and it's an honor to be participating in this conference for the 5th year in a row, and to be in the same company of leaders, really true community leaders like Clayton and Bruce. So thank you very much, Clayton, for inviting me.
Hey, good morning. I'm Alby Bocanegra. I am currently the interim CTO in the mayor's office of the CTO. So what that means is I do the CTO job at a discount. And my office is focused on, just improving the lives of New Yorkers through technology and tech methodologies. And, the way we do that is obviously programmatic, but also I think, by putting citizens and communities in the middle of the design process. And so I'm super fortunate that I work with a lot of really smart people, much smarter than I do, that really are just focused on that and just on, accessibility and digital rights. Obviously, my office owns the broadband plan for New York, which is really exciting. We've entered a really exciting phase in the broadband plan, so more to come on that. But more than anything, we get to partner with community leaders and community partners like Silicon Harlem and Clayton. So I have the best job in New York. I have the best job in the world, and so really stoked to be here. I love our partnerships that we have with really everyone in the community. And so, yeah, I'm excited.
Hello, hi there. I'm Noam. I'm a professor of finance and economics at Columbia University, a neighbor, increasingly a neighbor, now that we have also a campus on 125th Street. So I've prepared actually some substantive comments that I wanted to share with you, which is the internet is not so young anymore. It's now been 50 years this year that ARPANET, the predecessor of the internet, was started. It's been 30 years for the World Wide Web. And as this whole environment is getting into midlife and midlife crisis, it's also time to kind of review it. For a very long time, we basically approached everything and we heard the hype to some extent that there is no problem in the world that could not be solved by just adding internet, right? And if you add more internet, you solve the problem more. But now, all these years later, the question is, rethink everything. Is this really true? We have learned some of the things that we have, the statements that we've made in the past, which include that the internet is good for democracy, that the internet is good for social harmony, look around, that you can't regulate the internet, ask the Chinese. The internet is good for equality, just ask Jeff Bezos and others, and that the internet is good for jobs. And so the question really is this in fact happening? Now, the internet, of course, creates a lot of jobs, but mostly on the professional class level. And the professional class, which has kind of been increasing projection of about 17% in a decade, also needs people to mow the lawn, to tend the kids, to cook the meals, et cetera, restaurants, taxis. And so that category has also been increasing by 14, 15, 16%. It also attracts immigrants. But in the middle is the problem, the deindustrialization that has been going on for about 350,000 jobs per year for 2 decades now. The internet has not caused it, but it accelerates the deindustrialization, the moving of jobs to China and Bangladesh and wherever. Retailing, e-commerce is pressuring. There's now about, households spend about $4,600 or so a year on e-commerce, which is 50% more than it was 5 years ago. If you project this to 25% of all commerce, it means about 30 to 80,000 retail establishments closing down. And so this creates lower social mobility. It creates pressures of inequality that are fundamental, that are part of the structure of the industry. And it's not specifically American. We're making a mistake by tying this to a particular administration, to a particular president. These are trends that are going on in other developed countries too, and you can see that. Youth unemployment in Spain is over 33%. In France and Poland is over 20%. These are issues that go beyond North America. So inequality, high-risk environment, winner-takes-all type environment in which large firms dominate because the scaling is so high, and the people who own or have started these are becoming extraordinarily rich, and the rest, or many of the rest, are involved in the gig economy, looking from job to job to job, and competing against people from all over the world. And so what is then, therefore, the future? Well, the future, to some extent, is, particularly for New York, are financial services. And here there are kind of tremendous entrepreneurial opportunities. Take, for example, cryptocurrencies, a totally new way to conduct business and to transfer money. And it's not so much anymore one of the big banks, the some of them represented here, who have been standing at the sidelines waiting to see what is happening, or media communications and culture, where the technology is leading to online platforms which generate new type of content, experiential, involved, surrounding type content, art tech, combination of arts and technology that kind of would create enormous opportunities, or health services, which kind of are not just health services in the community, but telemedicine that will be provided globally by companies, yes, by healthcare companies. The American system, much derided for better or for worse, is likely to spread to the rest of the world as the middle class in a lot of other countries is going to try to shop for health services that they will not get domestically in their own communities. And all these things provide opportunities for New York and for New Yorkers, as long as they understand themselves as serving the global market and not just the local market. This is all good news to some extent, but the negative, the bad news is that it does not help the middle. These are professional type jobs in particular. And so what can we do? 3 things, since I have no time. 3 capitals: infrastructure capital, and here the NSF grant initiative is going to be very helpful. Human capital, about which I can say a lot, maybe later, and policy and community capital. And here we have to make the investment, we have to think, and we have to listen, and that's why we're here.
Do a quick test on your mics.
I'm testing, okay.
Okay,
Oh, it
everybody
works.
test real
Okay,
quick.
great.
All right, I think you're hot. Let me just quickly say, by the way, we're going to have a test after this from, Thank you, Dr. Noam. So the other thing I wanted to mention is the whole day is being streamed. So if you want to text some of your colleagues that weren't able to make it here, I want to thank Jolie and the Internet Society for doing the stream for us in all of the areas. Jolie is right here, as a matter of fact. Hey, Jolie. There he is.
When the other sessions aren't in this room, they won't be on our live stream, they'll be on the Silicon Harlem YouTube. Okay, so the other room during the breakouts, Silicon Harlem YouTube.
All right. Thank you very much. Let's move on. Please bring us your remarks and tell us what we're looking at here.
Okay. First, I just want to start off just to say that it's so critical that companies like T-Mobile and others partner with Silicon Harlem on this issue. And like Terry said, we started our roots here, T-Mobile with VoiceStream, OmniPoint. We also have, our Metro PCS brand and also our Layer 3 brand. So I'm going to just start off just to kind of talk about 5G, what it means, where we are right now with 4G. So I want everyone right now, there's 3 stats I'm going to start off with really quickly before I get to the slide. So 275 billion in investment, okay? I just want you guys to think about that. 2.2 million new jobs, 500 billion in economic growth. So these are 3 really key stats. These are stats based off of 5G investment and what we're going to see. So I want everyone just kind of close your eyes just really quickly. So when you think of 5G, think of yourself, you're on your tablet, you're downloading a movie. Right now, on our 4G LTE network, you're downloading your movie. Takes about 10 minutes. 10 minutes to download that movie, sometimes longer, because again, not every service is the same. But think about in a 5G world, 450 megabits per second. Think about if you could download that movie in 5 seconds. Okay, open your eyes. So if you can download that movie in 5 seconds, think about what else you can do with that innovation and technology. So in the 5G world, we had companies like Uber, Lyft, tons of apps were started, new entrepreneurs. So think about what that does in transforming the lives of people. So one thing I just wanted to start off with that slide is I wanted to just talk about connectivity and what 5G does. And so you'll see everything from the Internet of Things to virtual reality to autonomous vehicles. These are going to have huge implications on healthcare, on jobs, on schools, economic development, and what this means for communities. And so I just want for you all to think about just the practicalities of the change. I mean, one thing I think that the congressman had said earlier is, you know, technology is going to be changing rapidly. From 5 years ago until now. I have a 7-year-old daughter who probably can pick up on technology quicker than I can, who does the iPad. But think about what these kids can do in schools and what that means. So I just wanted to kind of lay this out. And I think the biggest thing with 5G that I wanted to point out, at least from my company's standpoint, is think about what that means with connectivity in people's homes. So with 5G, at least on the wireless side, when you think about the broadband ecosystem, think about how wireless can be a competitor to fixed and what that means in terms of, you know, affordability, disruption, being able to come to communities and having a choice of more than one or two competitor in the marketplace. So just want to kind of put that perspective as we're talking about this dialogue, because it really, really is important, you know, when we're having that conversation.
Excellent, excellent. So we have a lot going on, as you can see. There are seats in the what we call the Temple of Liberation. Come on in, find seats. There are seats. Come on in. Let me quickly, and there's some up front here as well. So if you want to sit down, you have a seat. Let me start with Dr. Noam's sort of alluded to human capital. But I'm not going to start with you. I'm going to start with Andrew Rasiej. Rasiej, can you talk about what citizens here in this room can be doing right now and what they will be doing in the future as it relates to sort of the civic duties of ourselves, but also thinking about how what we just heard, the oncoming 5G and all these other technologies that are basically dealing with our own privacy and our own data and all those things. What can citizens in this room be thinking about or be doing?
My brain is spinning trying to marry the doctor's comments with those of T-Mobile's comments to try to figure out what the intersection of this brave new world really means.
That's right.
Let me ask everybody in the audience, how many of you read in terms of service all the way through before you clicked agree?
You see the laughter?
Okay, there's a couple, probably a lawyer or two in the audience. So I'm all for more connectivity, faster connectivity. I think if I'm going to be downloading a movie, it better be RBG or I'm Not Your Negro in 5 seconds, because we need more movies like that delivered faster to more people. But one of the challenges of the promise of technology is, where is the public agency? Where is the public engaged in the building and design and the deployment of these technologies? When we talk about sensors on the screen, sure, would love to have less traffic, less pollution, a more efficient city, and as Clayton mentioned, maybe even a more equitable city. But when I see sensors, I think surveillance, and I think about power, and I think about people who take these technologies and use them not for the benefits that were just outlined by our panelists, but could potentially use it in ways that are nefarious and not necessarily to the benefit of the community. So Clayton, to answer your question, the digital divide is no longer just about giving people access to faster technology, internet access, whether it be wired or wireless. It's about giving people the ability to understand how these tools are used and deployed, and they can use them in order to maintain their voices in a democratic society. And unfortunately, we're losing that. That's slipping. You should ask yourself, if you're not paying for internet access, you are not the customer. And we have an internet that's been built on the idea that we give our data away to these companies in exchange for better services, but we're also giving away our civil liberties and our human rights. So the best thing that citizens can do is to be educated to be skilled and to be able to demand a seat at the table when these technologies are deployed.
Andrew, real quick, when you don't read the entire terms and conditions, what are we vulnerable to?
Well, I mean, the terms and conditions, the companies are collecting massive amounts of data. Now, I'm not saying that every single company that's collecting data is doing it for nefarious purposes, but we've seen, as our professor here has pointed out, that the internet is no longer making democracy better, and it's not making our social connections better. It's actually making things worse. And for those of us who've been in technology a long time, where we thought that technology would be a positive force on humanity, we're all really concerned because the tide has turned. And it has become negative. And the only way to get it back is to build empathy and equity and inclusion into the design of these technologies from the start, not afterwards. Airbnb, when they started, did not think that they would reduce the number of low-income and moderate-income apartments that are available in a city, therefore driving low-income and moderate people out of their homes. As evil as some people may think the founders of Uber are, they didn't believe that they would have taxi drivers killing themselves as a result of their service. The collateral effects of these technologies are not visible when these kinds of new technologies are deployed. And not to say that we don't want new technology. Human history is filled with examples where technology has improved the human condition. But if the people who these technologies are intended for are not part of the design and build process, they have the potential of becoming negative and actually hurting the very people they're trying to help.
So we all have to add our voice. That's what I'm hearing. Thank you, Andrew. So I want to stay on this topic for just a moment. Alby, if you want to say a couple of words about sort of the human capital piece of this, and then I would have you, Maria, follow Alby, and then Dr. Noam can sort of sum it up for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think along the same vein on digital privacy and security, I think, you know, as a local government person or person that's like interested in the co-development of policies and some things like that, you know, like one recent thing that we did was we partnered with the libraries, and we had like Library Privacy Week that, you know, provided training on digital privacy and digital literacy. So there's about 30 local libraries that have a staff person that is equipped and enabled to speak to citizens about privacy and digital literacy. So I would say, yeah, part of it is, you know, educating yourself and knowing, you know, there is no such thing as a free lunch. And so, you know, make sure that you know what you're getting into when you're agreeing to terms and conditions and how you navigate. I do believe that connectivity definitely provides more opportunity, and that closing the digital divide is important for everyone to participate in the global economy. But I also think it does come with its setbacks, and without local government offices or with local policy that reinforces privacy and making digital human rights as important as human rights in the physical world, you know, we put ourselves at risk. And so, you know, some offices like mine are responsible for that. And local government is definitely going to be responsible, more responsible than anything, especially when we have like federal governments, for our federal government specifically, you know, rolling back some of those privacies. And so super important right now that we empower citizens.
Well, this is why we have such a diverse, you know, set of panelists. You got private sector, public sector, academics, all on this panel. So we're hearing so many different things. And I really appreciate what you're sharing, Al, because it's important that we are connected to our electives, to our representation, in order to get this right. And we also got to, I think there's students in the audience. We really got to work with our students and young people. Like, for example, the Harlem Business Alliance, they do a lot of work with young people. Regina's here. We want people to be engaged early so it becomes part of the process. Maria? Have you can make some comments on human capital, if you don't mind.
Oh, okay.
And then Dr. Noam is going to.
I first just want to start off, because I want to address the point earlier, but T-Mobile is really a company that has prided itself off of our customers. We have a very, very vocal customer base. One of the things that our CEO did when he got in is he created a customer bill of rights. And this was because he had, you know, heard from the customers, and not just our customers, but other competitors' customers, about how, you know, they were being treated. So we were the first to get rid of overages on data, which was costing people about $53 billion a year, paying for overages that they never used up. And we also, a couple years ago, also put out a transparency report that talks about, what we do and records. I wanted to put that out there. But, for T-Mobile, when we think about, and I'm just going to get back to the 5G point, it's so critical, again, to partner with organizations, with also state and local, to kind of have these conversations and to, really focus on the 5G, because we want to make sure, again, that communities aren't being left behind. And again, I just want to point out, our company has really put forth, and it's a big effort of making sure that we're providing a service that has been affordable. We've done a number of things, we like to call them uncarrier moves or disruptive moves, to make sure that wireless has been more affordable. So for example, we were the first to start up EIP plans, because again, when you think about 5G and these apps and pricing can get expensive on things. So we've done some things like that, and we'll continue to do that. So I just wanted to kind of raise that point.
Okay, no problem. Dr. Noam, if you can talk about the human capital and anything that's sort of related to that.
Well, I think we are basically using 21st century technology on an education system that is kind of like formed in the 19th century, and basically all of its elements are kind of requiring reform and rebuilding. So let's kind of focus just on the higher education part, the college part. So what we have established in society is a system in which we front-load education. We give young people education, and then we kick them out into the world, and so go forth and basically kind of run on that intellectual capital that you have amassed. That does not work anymore in an environment of Moore's law type progress and change in knowledge base and everything. What we need to do is kind of reform all of these elements. For example, break up college, 2 years, associate degree, then kind of kick people out of their comfort zone, out of their kind of safety zone into the discomfort and the unsafe zone of real world, and then take them back and teach them for the rest of the 2 years maybe. But that's just the beginning, because I would also advocate that after a number of years, college degrees should basically sunset unless you upgrade, upskill, reskill yourself in the intermediate period to the newer knowledge levels, to the new skill levels, to the new technology. And that is absolutely essential. And one of the ways, for example, to do that is when people have to take even more than just a few weeks, but a few years, a year or two, is to let them take their Social Security payments up much earlier, let's say in their 40s or 50s, a year or two of a kind of sabbatical for upskilling, and then postpone the Social Security retirement receipts to a later stage, but take those year or two earlier in order to enable people to take off from work and learn new skills and upgrade themselves.
Okay.
So I had kind of like a similar experience of
Talking to the mic, Alby.
getting like kind of like pushed out of college after 2 years, but mine was more because of grades and less because of because I was ready for the world. But what I will say is that
You can always come back.
Another way of like making investments or like is also kind of supporting like community entrepreneurship investments, because then there are folks that are born with that like entrepreneurial skill set that I think that we can take down to the granular community level. There's folks who've just in their DNA are born with that skill set, and I think partnering with communities, partnering with industry, with locals, and anyone really that can support. I think that's what's special about New York too, is they really have that community like push forward effort, but also like recognizing that there are folks that weren't built for traditional education, and they were built for, entrepreneurship, but also creating more programs and opportunities for those folks, whether that's providing more connectivity or providing more training or community-based programs. But it's important to recognize that, some folks were just not built for the traditional model at all. And so embracing that and finding ways to empower those folks and not cut them out of the process because they don't have the educational background or the minimum qualifications for what it requires to be there is super important.
Can I just raise one thing, because you brought up a good point. One thing that we're finding out when we talk about like future of work is also, it's not just, STEM type of careers, but also making sure that, older workers are trained in new technology so that everyone is a part of what's going to happen in the future. And I'll tell you at T-Mobile, one of the things that we've done, we have this new innovation called Team of Experts where on our retail side and on our care side, it's a new and innovative way of thinking and also using technology that we regularly train our employees on. We also do a program called Generation T, and that came about because of Opportunity Youth, which was done during the Obama administration, where we found that 16 to 24-year-olds, we had made a commitment to hire into these entry-level positions, but these were technology type of positions. So I think it's, when we talk about human capital and future of work, it's so key to also include, the STEM conversation, but also to talk about how you train people for those jobs, and people who may not be going to college, but also just in that technology, but also older workers as well. It's important.
So you guys can start getting your questions together. I've got another one real quick here, but start getting your questions together because we're going to listen to you a little bit. This is Harlem, so I know everybody has something to say, but we wanted you to form it in the, of a question. So we're gonna. But I did have one last question from me. Unless no one else has a question, I'll keep going. And that's really related back to the subject here, which is rethink everything. And when I think about that, Bruce and I both are always thinking about how some of this advanced technology that we're all talking about, we talk about 5G a lot, and it's not here yet, and we know that it's coming. So how do we take the slide and figure out how that's going to impact our lives, right? So it's not technology for technology's sake, it's how's it going to help your commute get better? How's it going to ensure that you're, it's funny, I think about the future, and we'll talk about this later in the day, but I was walking down Frederick Douglass around 148th Street where our offices are, and I saw a young person, she couldn't have been more than 9 years old, and she was walking down the street looking at her phone, talking to somebody that she could visually see, and it hit me that there's a generation of people that will grow up and look at you and go, how could you talk to somebody without seeing them? Let's go to my question. All right, so rethink everything. Maria, why don't you start and tell us just from your own, it doesn't have to necessarily be a T-Mobile edict, but just from your own experiences, when you hear that theme, rethink everything, what hits you? Each of you can answer that same question, and then I'll take a couple questions from the audience because we only got a few minutes left.
Okay, I'm going to make this quick, but when I think of rethinking everything, I'm thinking about, the future generations out there. I'm thinking about how this could impact a young child in a school who could actually have access to technology that they've never had before, where it's going to make a difference in a parent working with their child at home. And I'm also thinking about it, honestly, globally, thinking about how, it might connect a child in Harlem to a child in West Africa, where I grew up and was from. And I'm also thinking about how, that part, but also how it opens the doors to technology, to innovation, to small businesses being created, startups. Like I said before, Uber, Lyft, all these technologies came out of 4G, but think about what can be created in a 5G economy.
Can I say something, Dr. Noam, before just because your last comment sparked something in me, which is, I tell a lot of people that, in Harlem, some of us who live here, we remember the days when cabs would not come up to Harlem. Anybody remember that? And what did we have to do, right? We would have to call one of the gypsy cabs, and the good news is they'd be in front of your door in 1 minute. You get inside that car and you tell them, take me this place, and they take you. We had Uber before Uber. And the point I'm making is this is not about technology. All it is an extra tool. They built an app and made it work. And same thing with Airbnb. There was a time in this country where certain people couldn't stay at hotels. So you'd have to figure out a way to find somebody in the neighborhood to go stay in their home. We had Airbnb before Airbnb. This is not new. We just have new tools. Dr. Noam.
One of the interesting questions is how does one get the last 20 or so % of the population connected? See, in the past, we have experienced that you can supply push of networks, but you are left with a certain number of people who just don't want to be connected, either because they can't afford it, but also because they cannot conceive why it is useful to them in a practical way for them to spend all that money on broadband-type connectivity. That, however, can change now, and 5G is one of the ways in which that is changing, because it makes it easier to have entertainment on the wireless. Entertainment is in some ways the killer app, in the same way that that email was a killer app for narrowband. This might be a killer app for truly broadband high speed, because people consume a voracious amount of entertainment and sports and all that kind of stuff. So if you make it possible and easy for them, they understand the value, just as they understand the value of regular over-the-air television and cable television. Everybody more or less has it. So now you will have 5G connectivity. Once you have that, you will also use it for other purposes, not just for entertainment. For those kind of, it's good for you spinach type stuff like e-government and e-education and all that stuff. So we're creating platforms based on a demand pull, not just a supply push, that are useful for population as a whole.
Nice to have a professor. You know, unbelievable, right, Andrew? It's nice to have a professor on the board. Alby, say a couple of words on Rethink Everything.
Yeah, so I think what comes to me when I think of Rethink Everything, you know, other than my dietary choices, I think, you know, there is this, technology is here, all of these new innovations are here, and there's much smarter people than me developing all these things. But I think now more than ever, it's important that, you know, we recognize that some of the there's a lot of solutions that came with technology, but some of the problems that have come with technology, those things don't get solved by one set of people. It doesn't get solved by local government only, or by academia only, or by industry only, or by organizations solely, but, you know, it's going to take a collective effort. The good news is right now there's this wave of civic-minded technologists, or just civic-minded people that are existing in the world today that are really thinking about these things. And so when I think Rethink Everything, I think of things like today, about the importance of having all these people at the table in this conversation about, let's not allow technology to happen to us. You know, we don't have to be first, but we have to figure this out together and realize that tech for good is way cooler than tech for tech's sake. And so I think that's what Rethink Everything right now means to me.
Fabulous.
Along those same lines of rethinking everything, we have to rethink our democracy, and we have to rethink what the term civic engagement means. Most people, if you ask them about civic engagement, will list voting or jury duty or maybe joining a community board. But as an example of how we could expand that notion in our mind, particularly in a connected world, my best example of civic engagement in New York in the last 6 years was Occupy Sandy, where thousands of New Yorkers went to help thousands of other New Yorkers who were suffering as a result of that storm, where the government actually didn't have the capacity to help, but citizens actually helped each other. So in the 21st century, in a hyper-connected age, being present is actually maybe more important than being connected. And civic engagement in the 21st century should be about being present in your community, present for your neighbors. Our political system is not going to be solved by political parties or by new leaders promising us hope, but by citizens actually talking to each other and solving problems for each other in their local communities, maybe with the use of technology as a tool. But if we don't expand and rethink democracy and civic engagement, then none of these technologies will matter.
Wow. sound like somewhat of a tweet. All right, so questions. I have one way over here. Do we have mics? There we go. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, but this one's going to go first, and we'll come down here. Try to keep your questions short so we can get most of them in, and the answers short, but powerful. Is it on?
Talked, okay. Yeah, my name is Broderick Byers, Executive Director of Shop Philly First.
Hello. Come all the way from Philly.
So my question is more in talking about technology, because we're looking at the same issues in Philly. It's what is the vision for this kind of technology for commerce, not e-commerce, but commerce, and specifically with your existing small businesses?
Who wants to take that on besides me? Anyone else? So I think, or Dr. Noam, you want to, if you could speak to that?
Well, e-commerce now has the ability to serve markets that are global, not just local. That's on the positive side. On the negative side is that everybody is competing with you also as a small business.
Okay, you just. So the question up front, Broderick, was, were you talking about brick and mortar, or are you talking about a new, sort of the oncoming new technologies? Brick and mortar, okay. See me at the break. All right. I'm going to come back to you, though, Broderick, but let me get a question. We have one here. Go ahead and let the young lady speak, and then we'll come over here to you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I have two quick questions. One is, how is the speed going to help those with vision or hearing disabilities? If there's any advancements for those with any type of stigmatisms or any issues with accessing the internet. And just another part to the question is, how is net neutrality going to affect the speed of which we are planning for the future?
Okay, two-part question.
I'll take the first part, and then I'll try to address the second. So for the disability community in particular, I think because of IoT and some of the new things that are coming down the pike. So when you think of sensors, also think of, the way a traffic light or a sensor that someone who may not be able to see. Think of different things like that. Think of devices that, for example, we may not have been created yet, but can help, again, transforming someone's life. And I'm, thinking about all the technology, because at the end of the day, technology being used for problem solving, and this is where, entrepreneurship and those type of abilities. So just think about, even with 4G, because of the speeds, someone who may be visually impaired, again, can be able to get a sensor or get the newest and latest, greatest device that will help them and help them with their everyday lives. And then in terms of net neutrality, I'm not going to get into this, but I think the biggest benefit when you think about 5G is there's always been, for different folks, capacity issues. We won't have that with the speeds that we have. The network will be much bigger, and things will come much faster. So.
And then just one point about ensuring that, one of the things to address just in terms of how people can access people with disabilities. So, full disclosure, I have a hearing impairment, and so the thing that I always think about is when designing any new technology, service, or whatever, folks should always design for accessibility and make their new technology or their service or whatever the most inclusive that they could possibly make it. And the way that happens is by putting people to work or putting people to design these that are like the population that they're trying to serve. So hiring an able-bodied person to develop something for someone who has a disability, probably not the best approach. And so I'd say it also touches on human capital too, is providing opportunities for people with disabilities so they can design for people with disabilities. It's just simple as that.
Okay. I'm going to take a question over here and maybe one others. We only can take 2 more questions, so we're going to take 2 more questions. We got Andreas and Bob both here. Okay, we'll get that, and then we'll get over here too.
Thank you. Hi, Clayton.
Good morning.
Like your jacket.
Oh, thank you very much. How about the shoes?
Andres Enriquez, New York Hall of Science. The 5G is very exciting. However, before we even get there, I'd like to know how we're going to use these tools to get at the 2020 census and really count the underrepresented folks who are in our communities. That's really where the power is. So how can we use these tools for that?
By changing our political system to make sure that the census is actually fair and transparent, and that biases aren't built into them, which is what's currently happening.
Well, it was just working. Here.
One. Okay. I'm Bob Ponce. I'm with the Harlem Emergency Network, and we use communication to make the neighborhood more resilient for disasters. The challenge that we see is the human bottleneck. How do we, the average person is being deluged with all this information about technology, new terms, 5G, blockchain, barely able to conceive what these things actually mean. How do we engage people with all this information without it being like basically putting them in front of a fire hose and turning it on? Because that's the biggest challenge we have right now. We're talking all these things about inclusiveness, but the average person barely has time to keep up with this stuff, and yet it is changing even more rapidly and is due to change more rapidly over the next 5 to 10 years. So how do we solve that problem?
Let me comment on that very quickly, because we at Silicon Harlem very much pay attention to that. And one of the things that we realized is, as much as we want, and we do, every single household to have a connection, because we found, if you didn't know, and if you haven't heard me speak before, there's 40 to 50% of the homes in Harlem that don't have broadband in the home. That's a damn shame. I mean, that means kids are going to Starbucks and libraries trying to get homework done. There's something wrong with us when we let that happen. Those kids got to navigate homeless people and all types of stuff and then work on a cell phone. How long will they really get into that? You know, your kids, my kids, they can get to come home and have a nice meal and sit down in a nice chair with a big monitor and get their homework done. There's something wrong. So we need to do what we call extensive digital literacy training for the community. The more you know about the internet, the more you and know how it can help your life, the more you will use and the more demand there will be. And if you think about it, I say this a lot, which is, if we do the right thing, right? All of us in this room, these great experts, if we do the right thing, you talk about people with different abilities and all of that. If we do the best and the right thing for the least of us, here comes your tweet. If you do the right thing and we do the best thing for the least of us, it benefits all of us. And that's critical to know, because there's many, many examples of that in this country's history, where when we said we want to make cutouts in sidewalks for people in wheelchairs can get up and down, well, hell, I like walking through there without having to step up on a curb anymore, right? People pull their luggage through that. People push their babies through that. Seniors on their walkers go through. It benefits us all when we do the right thing. So if we bring up the digital literacy, these type of topics will not be shocking. 5G will not be a mystery. Lastly, senior citizens. We trained senior citizens, as you might have heard Lloyd say earlier. First year we did it, which was about 4 years ago, the seniors would say to me, "Have a question, Mr. Banks." I said, "What's that?" He's like, "Why does somebody want to be my friend on Facebook?" And we can laugh about that now, but some of us had those questions when we first got on too. This year when I was teaching the seniors, Mr. Banks, I was in the store, I had my smartphone, and all of a sudden an alert came through and it told me about something on sale in the aisle. Can you help me understand what the process was for that? My mouth almost dropped. I was like, from somebody asking me about Facebook to somebody who can describe their experience with a smartphone is an uptick in digital literacy. That person will not have the biggest leap to understand what 5G can do for them. So that's a great question, Bob, and I feel committed to that, and I hope all of us in this room does too. I'm going to close it out, and I'm going to simply say thank you to this incredible panel. We want to try to stay on time. Yes, give them a hand. I mean, outstanding. They're not going to run away. They're not scared of any of you. So they'll be here. If you want to ask your question directly to one of these panelists, please do so. They're not going to run away. They're going to be here. We are going to take a quick break. There are 2 sessions following this. One session is over across the hall in the theater, and one of the sessions will be here, and it's on your programs if you have it. I'm trying to see where mine is, but essentially prepare for the next panels to start right on time, which I believe is at 11:25. Rethink Internet and Rethink Finance. 11:30. Thanks for the correction. Rethink Internet and Rethink Finance. Which room is Internet in? Internet is here. Finance is over there. Enjoy, and don't forget your T-shirts. Thank you. I know.